All right, good evening. My name is Ruben Roberts. I am the CEO of RER Consulting Enterprise. RER Consulting Enterprise has two signature programs. One is Teen Talk, and the other is the COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program. The COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program is responsible for sponsoring our Wellness Wednesdays. Tonight, our special guest is the incomparable Dr. Steve Gallen III. This guy has done so much in our community, from being a principal, being a school board member, and he was a school board superintendent in New Jersey. He really is a champion for the kids and the families in the community and his district and all districts for the school and education as far as education is concerned. Today we're going to be talking about issues pertaining to mental health and education and how we can address some of the concerns that you may have. This is a pre-recorded show, so if you have any questions that you'd like to post on our Facebook page or our social media platforms, please do so. If you have any questions of Dr. Gallen, please post them in there. And then what we may do is, if we get enough response, we can bring him back on so he can answer those questions that you may have. All right. So first, I'd like to welcome you to go to our website, which is www.mymentalhealthmiami.com. Go to the right-hand corner and click on the survey button. Take the survey questionnaire. It's important that you take the survey. Why is it important? Because with this survey, unlike other surveys, you actually get something back in return. You'll get a scorecard that will tell you where you fall as far as depression, stress, anxiety, and levels of support. Once you get that scorecard and you know your score, now you're able to go out and do something about it. And one of the things that we would encourage you to do is contact our care coordination team. Our care coordination team is powered by New Horizons, and you can reach them at 786-433-8487. And for first 50 people that respond to the survey and do the survey, we will, if you put your email address in, we will send you a $10 gift card. First 50 people that respond to the survey, we will give you a $10 gift card, but you have to put your email address in, and we have to verify that it's you, and you will get that. You'll get that $10 gift certificate. It's a Visa gift certificate. But go to mymentalhealthmiami.com. Take the surveys in the upper right-hand corner. If you have any questions, contact our care coordination team that is powered by New Horizons, and that number at 786-433-8487. This is Wellness Wednesdays. We happen every Wednesday at 7 p.m., and we invite you all to come out. So without further ado, let me introduce my very special guest, my very good friend, Dr. Steve Gallen III. How are you, sir? How are you doing today, Steve?
Hey, I'm blessed. I'm blessed, Ruben. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to first and foremost thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. But most importantly, thank you for your dedication, your leadership, and your compassion relative to the work that you're doing in our community. RER is at the forefront of issues that really seek to elevate, empower, and educate our young people. And again, brother, I want to salute you. You have been consistent. You have not embraced this work as a sprint. You understand that it is a marathon, and you continue to run. And I just want to let you know that the weight of my office, the weight of my friendship, the weight of my brotherhood will continue to run with you on behalf of our community, our families, but most importantly, our children. So I'm glad to be here.
That means a lot coming from you, my brother. I mean, I have the utmost respect for you and what you've done. For those who don't know, I'm going to allow him to give his story. One of the youngest principals in Dade County history, one of the youngest superintendents in our nation's history, a guy that has been instrumental in making sure that our kids are highly educated, they're informed, that they're fed, and that they're prepared for school, works in the inner cities, but most of all, he works for all of our students. So tell us a little bit about your path to where you are now, Dr.
Yeah. I've been tremendously blessed to have served this community, to serve this state, and quite frankly, this nation in the space of public education. I believe that public education, Ruben, represents the final frontier of social justice. It represents the final frontier and pathway toward prosperity. And again, in our community, with our children and our young people, especially young black males, it is the impediment. It is the opportunity to eliminate the pathway toward prison, poverty, or an early death. And that is something that many of us as young black men and young men of color in the urban cores throughout the country often face. And education has been the pathway toward my success and prosperity. Product of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, a graduate of Miami Northwestern Senior High School, a graduate of Florida A&M University, the highest of 7 hills in HBCU, that has done so much and set the foundation for my pathway. Started my career as a classroom teacher in Dade County, so I've been a teacher. I was an elementary assistant principal at the age of 23 years old, the youngest in the history of Dade County. Later on, became a principal of Holmes Elementary School right in the heart of Liberty City at the age of 26. After completing my doctorate from FIU and my master's, I would later be named the principal of Miami Northwestern Senior High School. Life does bring us full circle that I was able to be blessed to be the principal of the high school that I graduated from. And again, I served there for 7 years as the principal, earning the third longest tenure in the school's 60 plus year history. Later on, was elevated to administrative director of alternative ed at the district level, in which I had an opportunity, but also an obligation to really meet the young people where they were. Many of our students that sat on the margins of our educational system, both academically, both behaviorally, and also emotionally, and students who were destined again for prison, poverty, or an early death due to academics, due to behavior, and due to somewhat being trapped on the school to prison pipeline. We were able to reform that particular educational experiences for our students through what we call at the time highways to success, in which we reform alternative education in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Tremendous success of that program. And I was able to, at that time, to be identified through a national search, and I transitioned to become a superintendent of schools, the only black in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools history to start his or her career in the district and to rise to the level of superintendent of schools. We also know that this is not a destination, it's a journey. The journey obviously faces many challenges as it does opportunities. After those challenges, God continued to support me, God continued to guide me, and He empowered me with the support of this community to be elected decisively in 2016 as the District 1 School Board member here. Now, after my second term, I currently serve as the vice chair of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and I'm tremendously blessed to be in this position of leadership, to be in this position of championship, but most importantly, to be in this position of service. So again, I understand that this leadership and this service cannot be done alone. So I am grateful to be here with you to talk about a very critically important issue that very often is lost in our community, is lost with our young people, lost with our families, but it needs to be found if we're going to provide an opportunity for them to gain their strength through their struggles and to find their salvation.
Excellent. And I want the listening audience to know, for those who don't know, you see a man that's accomplished, but he comes from very humble beginnings. And I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things that you don't have to go and give them all of the details, but some of the things that you experienced and how you've overcome some of the challenges and trauma that you were exposed to growing up in the heart of Liberty City. I think that that's something that we're going to be addressing too, because it could have been easily a totally different path from you, from what I understand. But like you said, God's grace, and your hard work and determination, and those people who poured into you, led you on the path to where you are. This is your destiny. You're supposed to be right where you are now, no matter what the challenges were. You were supposed to be right where you are now, and you have a blueprint because you have a perspective that most people in your position don't have. So let's
Yeah.
hear about
Yeah.
that.
It's always scary, Ruben. I must admit, and I'm having one of those aha moments right now, because when you start to look at the dynamics of living, but most importantly, the dynamics of life and the
Mhm.
dynamics of struggle, I find myself always at the apex of being able to fully understand those experiences and those challenges and those setbacks and those impediments, not through what I've observed, but through what I've lived.
Right.
Yes, I grew up in Liberty City in the midst of the '80 riots, and we know what that was like during that particular time with the McDuffie riots, at the onset of the crack epidemic, and many of the issues that ate up our community, from those that snatched families and snatched life, to those that empower young people to believe that drug dealing and things of that nature was the only way to success. This is not something that I looked at outside of my home. I actually realized many of this in my home. My two brothers that I shared a bedroom with, they went to prison. I went to college, and I'm the youngest. My parents were divorced. I was a teenage father at a very young age. My closest friends were killed and committing crimes, so they were on that pathway toward prison, poverty, and an early death. So these are not things that I hear about. These are some things that I've lived and some things that I've been able to navigate through. Was never a perfect kid. I had to pull myself up through many setbacks academically, but again, people that poured into me, and again, God's grace and my early understanding that education was a pathway toward learning and lifelong success is something that placed me on that trajectory. I actually call it Light Found in the Dark. That's a
Mm.
documentary that was done on my life, Light Found in the Dark, the story of Dr. Steve Gallon III. And it really talks about how I was able to, at every iteration of my life, to find light after darkness. And so when we talk about mental health and mental health awareness, that represents a very dark moment in people's lives. But with the right support, with the right understanding, with the right clarity, and with the right assistance, they can find light after the most darkest moments. And this is not something that I read in a book, Ruben. This is something that I've lived. I faced darkness when my parents divorced. I faced darkness when my friends were killed on the streets. I faced darkness when myself faced many challenges as a delinquent, and found myself wrapped up in some of the issues of the juvenile justice system. I found darkness when I became a teenage parent, but we get to that point of giving up and we don't go through that particular process. So mental health is not new. It is a phenomenon, obviously, that's been around since the beginning of time. And when you look at certain communities and some of the trauma that our ancestors went through, 400 plus years ago, that was one of the most traumatic experiences one can conceive, to be snatched away from where they were and brought into a foreign land and placed into forced servitude and all of the challenges and all of the horrors of what our people face. We were able to persevere and come through because of family, because of structure, and most importantly, because of our faith. And these are some tenets that I believe are essential as a part of our mental health awareness and our mental health support systems.
So I want to, now that you're going into that, I'm glad that you gave us a little perspective, and I want folks to know that you not only walk the walk, but you talk the talk, and you deliver. Um, I worked at Holmes Elementary School under the leadership of Miss Gore, Dr. Gore.
Yes.
She was a no nonsense person. I
No.
think she was one that she was there before you, right? She preceded
Yes,
you. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Yes. And I mean, my heart really ached at Holmes Elementary School. I'll give you a story. I saw a young man. I was a counselor in the Alpha program there. And there was a young man whose mother was a very good mother. I mean, she was just on point. She dropped her kids off to school. They were well dressed. They were well behaved. She picked them up after school. This young lady had a moment of weakness, I'm assuming, or something must have happened. But one particular day, she came to the school, and she was unlike I've ever seen her before. She began, she was definitely influenced by some substance. I don't know if someone gave her something or if she took it voluntarily, but I've never seen her like this before. And as she came to pick up her child, she began to disrobe right there in the middle of the street and began actively hallucinating. And I say this because this is a part of whatever her uh, mental stresses were she was dealing with. But I know that you have similar stories that you can tell. But as a principal, let's look at it from that principal perspective or where you are now. When you see that, when your kids suffer that kind of embarrassment or shame or humiliation, kids can be hard because they'll, tease them for a while. When that parent is really struggling with something, and the parent that you know to be good to the core, but they're struggling with an issue, how do you, as a principal, help that family navigate through these issues? And I'm hoping that we can talk about things that's in place now and things that you've done in the past, because I know as a principal of Homes and of Northwestern, you've seen similar situations. And talk to us about how do you address these issues that have a traumatic effect on people from a mental health perspective.
Yes, yes. Obviously, over the course of 30 years, I have a thousand stories to tell. Some good, some not so good, some sad, some uh, totally depressing. And again, many of these are around the issues of mental health. And when we talk about the issues around mental health, it's around the issues of mental health not being properly addressed. So let's put that in
Right.
perspective. The terminology mental health, you can have good mental health, you can have unsupported mental health, unaddressed mental health issues. And that is something that was really talked about as an isolated conversation in education. Yes, we have that narrative about reading, writing, or arithmetic, but we went into the process, I think, around 1995, 96, actually, when I became a principal, to look at this issue of addressing the needs of the whole child, the whole child. And if you address the needs of the whole child, obviously you have to address the needs of the family. So at Holmes Elementary School, for example, during that particular time, we had an initiative that was called Operation Safety Net. And that
Mhm.
looked at the overall issues that vex children in urban centers. One of the principal strategies was based upon the Comer model, James P. Comer. If you look at James P. Comer, he was a psychologist, and he talked about our focus on curriculum and pedagogy and reading and writing and arithmetic. But if a child has issues with vision, if a child has issues with dental, if a child has issues with trauma, if a child has issues with emotional or lack thereof support at home, if a child has issues with overall nutrition, all of these issues are going to vex a child's ability to learn at higher levels. So we started to come into that realization. That paradigm, that thinking has not stopped to the extent that it is as deliberate as it should be, and that we've been able to take it to scale. That obviously is a continuous struggle in not only Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but in schools around the country. But that is why it is important that we have partners such as our RER, the Miami-Dade County, New Horizons, and all of our the Children's Trust, everybody who's able to put their shoulder to the wheel of the work that is needed for our children. I had a meeting this morning with the Miami-Dade Foundation around arts education in schools and how external partners could be a part of that particular process. So some of the supports that we have in place are really geared around how do we fully engage parents and families in this work. It cannot be done in isolation with the student. It cannot be done in isolation with the teacher. It has to be done in a very inclusive manner with respect to the family unit. And students have to have a means by which they can communicate with a trusting, caring, and competent adult. In the past, that was taboo. That was taboo. Adults in education, for the most part, did not see their role as being fully committed and engaged and responsible for the total child from an emotional health standpoint. From an emotional health standpoint. I go back to my days prior to being a principal at Holmes Elementary School when I was a teacher at Liberty City. A young man by the name of Tico Jefferson got a poor report card, and he eventually committed suicide. He was a fifth grade
Oh, no.
student at Liberty City. Beautiful young man. He always reminded me of Tevin Campbell. So if you ever see the singer Tevin Campbell when he was young, that's how Tico Jefferson looked. Tico committed suicide around his anticipated response from his mother around his poor performance academically. Fast forward to Northwestern, I had a young lady who committed suicide in the presence of her infant baby. She was a student, a teenage mother. She hung herself in her bedroom while her baby laid in the bed. And I have so many stories around those particular issues. So, with respect to mental health response strategies, we have to debunk the notion and the reality and the narrative that people have to suffer in silence. And so,
Right.
if we can't say anything more through this particular platform, is to let people know you don't have to suffer in silence. You don't
Right.
have to broadcast it on on social media. You don't have to feel like your business is going to be sprayed. But as students in schools, as members of the community, there are partners, there are resources that can help you to navigate through that. But people who take their lives, they suffer, Ruben, in silence. And the only time
Yes.
we hear from them is when it's too
It's
late.
right. And unfortunately, you had another attempt this year at Palmetto High where a student attempted suicide. Unfortunately, was not successful. But I want to share with you one of the things about our program, the COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program. And again, we want to encourage you guys to take the survey. Go to mymentalhealthmiami.com, hit the survey button in the upper right-hand corner. And those of you, the first 50 of you that take the survey today, you'll receive a $10 gift certificate, but you have to put your email address in so we can confirm that it's you and we can send the actual gift certificate to you. And then you can also contact uh, our mental health provider, which is our care coordination team that's powered by New Horizons. And you can reach our mental health provider at our care coordination team at 786-433-8487. So now I want to say this. One of the things in the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program, the sponsors of this Wellness Wednesdays, is that we believe in doing everything from a culturally and linguistically competent perspective, meaning that we speak people's languages. So we have our resources are available in Spanish, Creole, and English. All of our collateral is done in that same manner. You'll see images of you, and we agree with you with what you're saying that you do not have to suffer in silence. But one of the challenges, I've been working in this space for a while. One of the challenges is that a lot of our families, a lot of people in our community, don't feel that folks are sensitive to their particular issues when it comes down to dealing with governmental entities, including the school district. And I want to say for those parents who have kids who they want to be tested, uh, or feel that they were tested and the results are not accurate, or those parents that feel that their kids are going through having some issues and they're trying to get resources for them, and they're being told constantly that the resources are not available and that the only way that they get resources is when that kid acts out enough to where he gets into the system and then he or she begins to receive those resources. What say you to this about the cultural sensitivity piece, where parents will be uh, more encouraged to go and seek those services, those who are actually looking, and for those who are not looking, how do we engage them to connect with those services? What say you for that parent who has a child who has been diagnosed and highly medicated, but nothing has changed? So there seems to be a cultural disconnect in whatever services that they have received. I'm sure that you can speak to this issue, so I'd love to hear what your response is to the audience so that they can know what their choices are to advocate on their child's behalf.
There is not only a cultural disconnect, there's also cultural disengagement around the
Mm,
discourse relative to mental health and wellness. Uh, this particular body of work has been prevalent, it has been pervasive, and it has been prominent in other cultures, and usually cultures that have the level of financial affluence to get the support and services that they need to. Unfortunately, in many of our communities, from a cultural standpoint, we are not deliberate, we're not intentional, we're not emotionally transparent about
Mm.
what maligns us emotionally. Starting with the men, I walked into a classroom today, and it was a class of special needs students, and every single one of them was a black boy. Every single one in that class was a black boy. I don't think the parents, or I don't think the young men at the time made a determination about their testing, their placement. But usually, when there's a problem, that is when mental health issues are identified. And that's why I use that language, suffer in silence. So if our young people are silent, and they're
Right.
not disruptive, they're not disrespectful, they're not openly destructive, then they're internally destructive to themselves, and we'll never know until it's too late, until we see them either causing harm to themselves or causing harm to others, whether it's in Liberty City, Overtown, Miami Gardens, Schools, Pompano, where they are involved in gun violence and taking their lives with no regard for human life, with no regard for their futures, because they've been desensitized from an emotional standpoint. And what we have to understand is that's not normal. So,
Right.
what I say to parents and families is be deliberate, be proactive about getting your children the help that they need. Be proactive about doing what you need to do for your families. Now, our parents have indicated that they can be proactive, Ruben. They can be proactive on Saturdays at
Right.
Little League
Football game.
games. They can be proactive on Friday nights. They can be
Right.
proactive Saturday mornings when the latest Jordans come out and they're at the mall in line. So our parents have demonstrated their level of proactivity when it comes to their children.
Right.
But we have to be proactive around those things that may not be very popular, and in some cases may even be painful. So what's popular may be, may not be painful. It may be painful, but that pain can only be addressed through proper professional support. And we have to understand that communities have addressed these issues through medically proven, through medically trained professionals for forever. But we've not done that. When you start to look at athletes, when you start to look at actors, some of the big superstars that we know, I don't want to name check some, but some that don't look like us, they've gone through these crises emotionally, and they continue to go through it, get on top, stay with the influence, with the successes, and everything else. But that's not something that we typically do in our communities, whether it's a lack of resources, whether it's a lack of transparency. But I think the most important resource that we can provide to our people is what we're providing right now, and that is that resource of information and education.
I agree. And so one of the things I know in our community is that there's a stigma behind a mental health diagnosis. And when people hear about a mental health diagnosis, they hear in our community, they perceive it as a weakness. But I'm here as a clinician to tell you that every single human being that's listening right now, if I were to use our diagnostic tool, which is the DSM-5, I can find a diagnosis that fits you specifically. So it's not about being weak. It's just a human factor. There's some of our issues are situational. For example, COVID may have played a part in some of the stress, anxiety, depression that you may have. Some of our situations are generational, where it may be passed down, and
Mhm.
then there's some other categories as well. But the key is that we receive services. So where does a parent go if they need mental health services in Dade County Public Schools?
The
Tell us
first
where they go.
the first point of contact, I believe in the law of proximity, the first point of contact is the school site counselor. If you have an issue or you have an absence of a school site counselor, you obviously have your school administration, your principal, but your counselor is the first point of contact that I would in a school. That counselor would be able to engage the team, because obviously it is a team approach, whether it's the school psychologist, the school social worker, administration, the teacher, the families. But the first point of contact should be the school counselor.
All right. So after they see the school counselor and they're not satisfied, what's the next step?
Well, you have to define satisfaction, but the buck starts and stops in the school site with the principal. But to the extent that the parent or the family feels as though the level of responsiveness, the level of resources, the level of support is not sufficient at the school site, they can request for some additional support outside of the school. But there's obviously a process that you go through, what we refer to as response to intervention, RTI, and that the response to intervention in the child study team process is a good process because historically, and I wrote about this, believe it or not, in my first book that I wrote, Educating with Love Without Compromise. I talked about people believe that to refer is means to test means to classify means to place. And that's not always the sequence of events that should take place. There needs to be some additional interventions that occur prior to testing. There needs to be some interventions that occur prior to obviously classification, and definitely some interventions prior to testing. So, but the parent needs to be a part of that process all throughout. So nobody should make any decisions on behalf of the children without the parents being a part of that process. Yes, we do have educational professionals who bring their educational acumen and knowledge to the conversation, but the parents should be a part of that particular process as it moves forward.
So
Uh,
you're saying that the
if,
parents actually have a say in this process. So this is for our audience.
Absolutely, the process cannot occur without the parents' involvement. The parent needs to sign. They need to be attending meetings. They need to be a part of that conversation because the parent has a very important perspective. It's their child.
Right,
An educational decision that involve a parent's child, a parent has to be at the table because the parent uh, owns the table. I mean,
right.
we bring the expertise, but these are parents' children, and in my life, I've never found a parent that doesn't care about their child. They may navigate that particular expression differently.
Differently.
you
Right.
know, I tell people when I was at Holmes Elementary School, a parent that flips over a table over their child, yeah, they flipped over the table. They're angry with you, but guess what? They still love their child.
They love the child.
Yes.
Right. So now there are also ways that the parent can research on your platform, on your website, for additional services or contacts that they can connect with people to get some additional services. Is that correct?
Yes, we have outside referral systems, and the Children's Trust, I must say, has been a tremendous partner through their care coordination services that they offer. And again, the care coordination model reflects the notion that it requires various stakeholders to be a part of the process. And I reference the
Mhm.
Children's Trust because I'm not referencing a particular program or a
Right.
partner, but they are a funder of programs and partners, and they're a funder of resources. So absolutely, there are external resources that our websites can provide insight into. And again, the counselor, the school administration serves as a resource. And if you're not satisfied, you can always call the district office. You can always call the district office. I just got a call 2 weeks ago where a parent made an attempt over the course of a year or so to do homeschooling, and they were concerned about the lack of progress of their child from an emotional standpoint. Believe that now. It wasn't an academic standpoint, it was an emotional standpoint because uh, schooling and education is a social experiment, Ruben. It is.
Yes.
It's an experiment in terms of how people interact. I just left a pre-kindergarten classroom, and pre-kindergarten children eat in the classroom in many regards because they learn things about how to eat at a table with other children. But it's not always about the academics. It's about the social dynamic, the social experiment, the social expression, the social experience of education. And isolation runs counter to that.
That's
And I
right.
think that's what the pandemic revealed to us is that academic social isolation caused some trauma for children, for young
Right.
people, and for adults.
Right.
For adults, for those of us who
Right.
had to sit in the house and work from home and couldn't go to the club and couldn't go to the restaurants, and
Or
some
actually
people,
work with your kids. I think that a
listen,
lot of parents found had a newfound respect for teachers after having to stay in the house.
Ruben, when we open up, Ruben, when we open up this conversation, I said, God always provides a means by which anything that comes up, I can always weigh in on it. It's not that I'm that smart or that lived, but guess
Right.
what? You want to talk virtual learning? I did virtual learning for a year and a half with my daughter. I
Oh,
did
wow.
that at home. I know what that is like. It's not, you don't have to tell me. I know what it was like. I know what it was like. And me being a trained educator with a PhD, a doctorate degree, and having been a classroom teacher and all the way through, it is a newfound respect, and it is some trauma emotionally
Right.
because of that isolation. So if it was traumatic for me, it could be traumatic for children. We know what it was trauma for children and families, and I think we need to be honest and transparent about that. And I hope that my conversation and my words provides that level of transparency, even in the person of what many people believe represents the epitome of strength.
Well, listen, Dr. Gallen, I really appreciate you sharing. We have to have a part two to this because I have not even touched the surface of all of the, the topics that I wanted to discuss with you. But I want to give you a couple of minutes to say some last words of encouragement to the students, to the parents, in terms of advising them how they can have an outstanding school year. We want all of our students to thrive and do well during the school year and want them to know that they have the support of the district, of the teachers and staff that are at the school. So, some few words for your final words.
Yeah, well, three words I say relative to school readiness for this coming school year, and I'll give you the three phrases, if I will: respectful, responsible, and ready to learn. Respectful, responsible, and ready to learn. And why do I choose those three words? A late colleague of mine uh, used that as a mantra for their educational program. Her name was Alicia, and she always talked about if students can hit those three uh, areas, being respectful first, respectful of themselves and respectful of others. That's the first iteration. Being responsible for one's own learning, one's own preparation, whether it's homework, whether it's schoolwork, whether it's iReady, whether it's whatever you have to do, you have to be responsible for your own learning. And thirdly, being ready to learn at all times. And that means being mentally, emotionally, and intellectually engaged. And those three iterations, Ruben, I believe not only apply for the students, they apply for the adults in that particular process, from the teachers to the students, to the parents, to the families, to the grandparents, to the uncles, to the aunts, everybody who is a part of that village. And I'll close out by saying, in the words of the Maasai village, when they greet each other, they often say, "And how are the children? How are the children?" I say in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, we're off to a great start of the school year, and that start is not simply based on what principals did, what the superintendent did, what the board members did, what teachers did, but kudos to what parents have done and continue to do by first and foremost entrusting us with your children, but also being partners in the educational process. And I'll lastly say to parents, don't wait for the school to call you. Call the school. Introduce yourself to the teacher. Communicate your interest, your engagement, and your expectation. Your expectation as relates to the teaching and learning of your child. We have to be accountable and responsible and respectful and responsive stakeholders in this process because we work together. We work for you, but more importantly, we all collectively work for children. So I look forward to working for you during the course of this year. I am Dr. Steve Gallen III, your board member for District 1, but your current vice chair, and I'm committed to serving and supporting children from Florida City to County Line Road. Again, thank you, Ruben, for having me on. And yes, we have to have a part 2, 3, 4, and 5 because when we get together around real issues around our community and our people, it goes back to what Donnie Simpson used to say on BET when he closed out. Great minds talk about people, great minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. So I always like having a great minded conversation with you, my brother, around the ideas of right way we can elevate, educate, and empower our community. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you so very much. You've given us some enlightenment and shared with us things that we definitely need to follow. We will be having a follow-up discussion to this, and I want you guys to tune in. I want you to make sure that you tune in, and if you have any questions, Dr. Gallen, please put those questions in the chat, and we will address those questions in our future meeting. Thank you so much. This is Ruben Roberts and Dr. Steve Gallen III signing off for our Wellness Wednesdays. Have a pleasant evening. All right, good evening. My name is Ruben.